the numbers, the lining up of biblical passages and different kind of spiritual, just everything seems to be interconnected today. Just like I think it was the past week, there was news of a white buffalo that was released. And this is very big information. If this information came out about 20, 30 years ago, oh my goodness, the Lakota would be, they would be flipping out. They would be cheering and they would be dancing right now. But right now there's the noise is quiet. But
Why
with
is
that
that?
whole,
Tell us about that prophecy, will you?
the prophecy is like the white buffalo prophecy is a prophecy that came from they call they call him Crazy Horse. Crazy Horse was a Lakota, and his tribe was getting defeated. The Black Hills area, the government was going to overtake it. I guess you would say they were looking for gold. So, anyways, he knew that he was at the end of his rope. So he went up to the mountain and he prayed, and he had a little vision quest, and the vision came to him, and he brought that vision down, and the face paint that he put on his face, he made his face all black, and he made this little lightning strike down his face, and that people that followed prophecy, they were like, "Holy shit, the lightning right there!" They were freaking out. So that lined up with prophecy and all that stuff, which gave him a bit more of a character dynamics, I guess you would say. But
We nailed it. Again, yeah, we've been talking about it for years, and I know many of you have taken advantage of the opportunity, and many of you still are. Gold, silver, smoking hot. So check this out. Here's some statistics on gold. It's gone up more than 81% in the last 5 years, almost 20% in the last 12 months. And it's happening. Central banks are ditching the US dollar, and US treasuries are buying more gold. What is the good news? Well, there's plenty of good news, especially for those of you that call Noble Gold Investments, because it's still predicted to go up a lot more. Now, there's never any guarantees, so follow what the money funders are doing, and they're still buying gold at a record pace. The UBS even said it would go up to $5,000. Noble Gold, their phone is ringing off the hook. Good news is there's somebody there that will help you from start until the completion of your purchase. And if you qualify, if you start a new account with Noble Gold Investments, they will gift you a standard gold 1/4 ounce coin to add to your collection. That's a nice addition to anybody's collection. Give them a call, 1-877-646-5347. Go to leakprojectgold.com. You can also go to noblegoldinvestments.com. They're giving free ebooks for Leak Project listeners. And let's get back to this presentation right now. Ladies and gentlemen, Rex Bear Leak Project, how the heck are you? Beautiful day today in southern Colorado, as well as northern New Mexico. Shondale Lee is with us. It is an honor to speak with you. Thank you very much for being a guest. You're also a personal friend. We've done a lot of fun adventures together. I'm sure we will do many more in the future. And folks, I'm going to see if I can get Shondale to go to the Grand Canyon again, and we might do a little adventure, maybe a personal tour with a small group of people. But anyway, we'll talk about that later. Shondale served in the military. Thank you for your service. And my brother served also, my father, but my brother did serve in Afghanistan infantry. And my dad, Golden Knight, retired Golden Knight, so he got to have a lot more fun in the military.
awesome. So you understand the military mindset about how to they bark back and forth, I guess you would say.
Oh yeah, yeah, and so I wanted to say thank you for that, and I wanted to let people know about that because I think that builds character. Like you've
Yeah.
been through a lot that most people have no idea. Like
Oh
they
yeah.
probably couldn't even fathom. And so much respect to you. And what's been going on, man? What have you been up to?
Just pretty much the same for me, and nothing really changed. Life has just been going, and we've just been viewing what's been going on in the world, the hardship, the war that's been developing. But in one of his visions, he said that in the end times, when that white buffalo returns in the seventh generation, which this current generation that we're in right now is the seventh generation from the Wounded Knee massacre back in the late 1800s. Anyways, on his vision, he said when that white buffalo returns, there's going to be a huge white flash during in the day. It's going to make the day brighter than the day, he plans. So that was one of his prophecies. The end of it, I guess you would say.
Sounds like a solar flare, a flash from an asteroid
Yeah,
or something. I don't know.
yeah. With
Weapon.
with yeah with Crazy Horse, he's the Native American Jesus, I guess you would say. He's the man that's riding in the white horse in the sky, and that's how he's going to return. They say he's going to return with he's going to be riding this white horse, and there's going to be a rainbow, a beautiful rainbow that comes across the sky, and he's going to be riding on that rainbow, bringing peace and vengeance, I guess you would say. And to a whole bunch of like Lakota, they're afraid of that because they're the ones that turned him in. The government, they were trying to catch him, and they couldn't catch Crazy Horse, so they had to befriend him, I guess you would say. So the chiefs kind of like befriended him. They hey, come on, let's go. We'll give you a retirement home. We'll let you. We got a really nice place for you. Kind of like an ending to. Have you read the book with of Mice and Men, where he was telling the story of the rabbit farm and all that stuff, and he just pops the cap right in his head. Pretty similar, I guess you would say. But they done him dirty, and that's the reason why a bunch of natives are afraid of him, I guess you would say. They're afraid of what he will do, their judgment, I guess.
So basically, let me see if I get this right. Crazy Horse has this vision.
Yeah.
And then in the vision, he sees a white buffalo, and that white buffalo is connected to his return. But when he returns, he's going to return and go after the people that sold him out.
Pretty much the same vengeance as Jesus, I guess you would say. It's the same. It's the same story, I guess. A whole bunch of the painting that I did for you, with the people dancing in a circle, that particular painting right there, they call it the ghost dance. And that dance it came about after Crazy Horse was killed, and Native Americans were getting taken to reservations, little war camps. So during those war camps, they could just sit there. They couldn't do anything. So a couple of people were like, we need to exercise. We need to do stuff. So they started walking in the circle, doing a little circle dance. And people that were watching them, the guards, they were like, hey, we can't be having this. These guys are having fun. They were just having fun dancing around in the circle, just having life again. So within that circle, they called it the ghost circle, is where suffering, pain, famine, and everything doesn't exist within that circle. I guess you would call it like a little safety line, I guess. A place that is free, spiritual free zone. Pretty interesting with all the animals. You know how the animals started going in circles and circular motions all over the world? Started with the caribou up in North America. You've seen the caribou, you've seen the turkey doing it, you've seen the sheep doing it, you've seen cows doing it, you've seen horses doing it. It's just like it's 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 a power, I guess you would say, that comes down. They call it like when a person just has too much, like when you have like a device or something, and it's just too much overload. Back in the 80s, I guess you would say 80s and 90s, when we would have those handheld devices and it would just be scrambling. You would have a little pen or a needle. You would get the little reset button. You hold the little reset button and it kind of blinks out for a bit. That's the kind of state, I guess, that circle puts you in.
Yeah. And what do you think? Do you think that we're in that time now, that he's going to return, and that light's going to go off, that bright light, brighter than the day?
For me personally, I've seen the night turn to day. I've been in Fallujah during the whole. I've been in Fallujah for two months, I believe. We were there for the building up, for the bombing and everything. So I've been in Fallujah for the entire battle of it. But there was a time when the Air Force did their first shock and awe run. we were sitting there, and we already knew what the time was going to come down and everything. We were watching. We didn't have cameras back then. Well, some people had cameras. I'm sure some of my colleagues have cameras and all that stuff like video, but I haven't seen any of it. We were just sitting there, and they started bombing. And just the night turned to day for at least an hour.
So that could have been a part of the prophecy.
Yeah.
Man, that's intense. Like there is so much stuff going on right now around the world and has been for like I remember that speech where George Bush
Mm.
Sr. came out and
Oh yeah.
said, you know, it's a new world order. And then
Mm.
then he rounded up the troops, he rounded up the generals and gathered them in their masses like witches in
Yeah.
black masses for the wars in the Middle East. And
Oh yeah. It seems like that message was. It seems like that message was. It was kind of drilled into our generation, the Generation X targeted generation, I guess you would say, because I remember like in the early in the late '80s and the early '90s, that word New World Order was starting to spin around. Bands like I, I I love a lot of music, and industrial music was one of them. Ministry was the band that I was listening to, and that was the echo that they would use in some of their songs, sort of like a subliminal, uh, kind of like a they're grooming us, I guess you would say, for the New World Order, making us Generation X soldiers.
definitely making us aware. And the propaganda,
Yeah.
fear propaganda with Christian mindset, like the
Oh yeah.
fundamentalist Christian mindset, which I was around that much of my earlier, you know, many of my
Oh
early
yeah.
years where people would come around and talk about the mark of the beast, the New World Order. If you didn't take the chip, they'd cut off your head or put you in a camp.
Mm.
Guy that used to come around in to a coffee shop that was quite a bit older than many of us that were hanging out there smoking pot and playing chess and
Yeah.
smoking pool. And he gathered us all together and watched this video of Bush Sr. saying it's a new world order. So they've been pushing that end of world propaganda or Armageddon propaganda. Now, but for you, like my upbringing and your upbringing, so different in many ways. Like, you
Yeah.
know, I was raised middle class in Park City. My parents worked their asses off, like, you know,
Mm.
to give us that lifestyle.
Yeah.
But it was still middle class, you know. I mean, like
Oh
in
yeah.
Park City, if you don't drive a Porsche and your parents aren't multimillionaires,
Mhm.
and my parents aren't multimillionaires,
Cool.
but they're really hardworking. But the reason I'm bringing this up, Shondale, is, you know, I was in an environment where I was protected.
Yeah.
You were raised in an environment where it was like free range, super
Yeah,
free.
it was a free range. I grew up in. My parents were pretty much hippies, I guess you would say. My mother was 18 when she had me, and my father was like about 26, I believe. And so they were extravagant. They were my father was a cowboy. He was a cowboy Harley guy, I guess you would say. He was into that whole creed, very American.
Well, tell us about this because you've shared some stories with me personally about your upbringing and some of the stuff that your parents showed you with that environment and how it is similar to some of the natives that weren't surrounded by boxes in boxes and working in boxes all the time. You were out of the box, and
Oh
you
yeah,
still are. Yeah, tell us about
yeah. Well, for my mother's side, we she was raised very strict. She was for us Native Americans, for us Navajos especially. There are two groups of us. There's the natives that got caught with the long walk back in 1864. It, the whole long walk thing started in January 6, 1864. But there was a lot of Navajos that were caught and taken to camps. We were taken from the Four Corners area and taken to a little spot called Bosque Redondo in the Santa Fe area. The Bosque Redondo pretty much means a circular forest, I guess you would say. So they took us Navajos there trying to relocate us, but a whole bunch of us died. And so my mother's side was the one that submitted. So they were very submissive and with the program. They were like, you better not talk back to authorities. You go eat your food right, go fold your clothes, go do this, cut your hair and this and that. And then you go to my father's side of the family and they were way opposite. They spoke Navajo. They didn't speak English at all. They weren't down with the program, I guess you would say. So yeah,
You have conflicting interests with your parents, but you've
yes,
got the same opposites attract. And didn't you say once that you would go on walkabouts when you were just a kid for days?
yeah. We well, we were with my father's side. We had to do sheep herding and stuff. So me and my sister, we were sheep herding ever since we were uh, still in diapers, I guess you would say. So that was an early learning that we went through tracking and just going for long walks and just being on your own all day and all night. And that's where we learned different, I guess you would call it the zero G communication devices with the mirrors, the little mirrors, and the different ways of calling us back for lunch or to we're going to go into Farmington or go to town or whatever. There's different methods, I guess you would say.
Oh, that's cool. That's
Yeah,
really cool. Yeah. So tell us about that. What was it like being a sheep herder in the were you on the reservation? Were you in New Mexico? What was it like? Was it desert land, vast desert, like
the
shiprock kind
location is
of?
very beautiful. It's on top of a mesa. In the winter time, you would go on top of the mesa. In the summertime, it would go to the bottom of the mesa. And I have a very weird family, I guess you would say. My mother and my dad's father and mother, they were also separated. So my father's father lived on top of the mesa, and my father's mother lived on the bottom of the mesa. So they had different families, I guess you would say. And they would always like be trying to avoid each other. But me and my sister, we would rotate between them. So it was kind of a weird environment. But it was there was a lot of cattle that we would wrestle up, I guess you would say. When I got older, I got to advance to herding the cattle. When you're smaller, you start with the sheep, the little sheep and the baby sheep and the goats. So it's pretty much a sheep herder life.
The other day when I was biking, I was in this area in Chama, and if you take the highway from Chama, it'll take you back into Colorado. So you're like
Oh
going
yeah.
New Mexico to Colorado right there, and you go over Cumbre Pass. And as I was biking, I look to the left, I see this cowgirl, and she's on a horse and she's herding up all these sheep. And it's on this like land that's private land out there. I think they own thousands of acres, But I was thinking the first
Yeah.
thing I thought of when I saw her herding the sheep is I thought of you and some of the stories you've told me about sheep herding and when we go out places, what we're doing. Oh, we're sheep.
Yeah.
So so I just thought, wow, what an experience to grow up in an environment where you're herding sheep and like you
Yeah.
said, you're using zero G technology to get each
Yeah.
other back. That is so cool, man. That is so
Yeah,
dang
like
cool.
you remember when we were driving around and we're like, well, what are you gonna do if someone comes up to us and like gets mad at us? Oh, we're looking for our sheep. We lost our sheep somewhere around here. Yeah, that's what you we would usually say, like traveling around other people's lands, I guess. Like, yeah, we're just looking for our sheep, bro.
You were also telling me that in the desert, when you would think there's no food, that if you just look under the dirt, just do a little bit of digging, you could actually survive and thrive in many areas where people would have no idea there's a food source.
It's gonna be a very hard, but yeah, there's actually food around there. They call it tranche teji, is like a root is a they call it Navajo carrots. It's a really wicked root that would come out, but it's very noticeable with the flowers. It has like purple flowers on it, and the other crop would be onions, like they're little bell onions. They look like horseradish onions, but they grow around here also.
Nice. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and there's different like plants that you can shave off and make different kind of drinks out of different herbs.
Mai tais, huh?
Yeah.
I've heard of Mormon tea or
Oh
Mormon
yeah.
caffeine or something like that, but it's
Mhm.
yeah. I want to hear, if you would, and I know a lot of people, I've brought up bits and pieces and I've referenced you. You talk about these prophecies where there was a time that humankind walked with the gods. And now it appears that we kneel to the gods. And you were
Yeah,
referencing some scenes from
the
certain.
capital. Hmm.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Okay. Um, us Navajos believe that we're from we're beings that advance from different worlds. I guess you would say we started from dark world to black world, which was they say we started off as every living organism on this earth started off as a spirit, just a like a smoke, what you would say, a substance, and those substances roamed around Earth, kind of like how a fire would burn, and you know how like dry ice kind of like just lingers, the smoke. That's how spirits were just lingering around. So then they started like noticing these elements, like, hey, I want to be a rock. So one would turn into a rock, and one would turn into a tree, one would turn into the deer, one would turn into just different animals. And that's how the substances became. And in the beginning, there was first man and first woman. They were created, they came onto the earth. But when they were placed on this earth, they weren't placed together, they were placed at different poles. And these different poles, they're not really known where those poles were, but they were opposite of each other. And first man and first woman, they say, were giants, were big, big, big entities. But they came around and they cultivated this earth in the beginning. And when the way they found each other is that first man, he had a flame, but his flame, I think it was too hot. It was a white flame. It was just white and just blazing. And when he would try to put something on it, just completely burn it up and incinerate it. So it was pretty useful, or useless, I guess you would say. And first woman, she had the blue flame, the blue part of the flame. It was too low. It was calm. It was good for heating up, but not really hot enough, I guess you would say. So as they wandered around this first world, they started to notice all these animals around. They weren't really animals; they were like insects. They were like the ants and the bees. Just every insect that you would see around. You will eat the insects. Yeah. But anyways, they were our ancestors. You would say. Anyways, they over the years they came together, and they with the union of the white and the blue flame, they were able to create a bigger flame. With this bigger flame, they were able to see this center tree in the middle, with a big center tree that just grew up out of crazy, like this big, big, big. So they started to climb up it, and they noticed that there was a little puncture hole on the top of it, and they crawled up into it, and that's how they got into the blue world. Once they got into the blue world, they started to notice different animals around. The insects weren't there no more. A couple of insects followed them, and after that, they were just there. They're like, "Whoa, what the heck?" So then they started seeing birds. This is where the bluebird chief, I think it was, he lives. And he came and he greeted them and, hey, welcome to our world. Our world is really nice. We like to do this. This is our customs. So they stayed there for a couple of the number that us Navajos get is 23 months that we always get 23 months or 23 weeks, but it's always the number 23.
What this 23 is a very significant number.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite numbers, actually, also,
Mm-hmm.
but it used to follow me around a lot. But what's up with 23?
Yeah. I have no idea. That's just the number that they give that we're
I'm surprised you said that, Shondale, because you're like the Navajo code whisperer. Anytime I
yeah.
mention a number, you seem to have a million connections. You don't know? Do
No.
you have an
Yeah,
idea?
the 23.
Yeah. Yeah. What's your theory on
No.
it? I'd like to get your theory on it. If you had a theory, what would it be?
if you go to 3 plus 2, you go to the 5, which would be the five fingered people, which we would have the 5 digits. And also, would you go 3 plus 2? That would be 6, right? Or I don't even remember.
3 plus 2, you've got five.
Yeah. Oh,
Five
three
path.
times two is 6. Yeah.
3 times 2 is 6. Yeah, I was like, what happened?
Yeah. I'm like
He's talking
totally
too fast.
confused.
Let's slow down. It's his first time on Zoom, folks.
Yeah.
Shondale, you're kicking ass, man. This is such a cool, really. I mean, you've shared so many amazing stories with me personally that I'm really glad you're now sharing them with the world, because I've
Yeah.
had so many people that have asked to get you on the show specifically, and I know we've had a couple of opportunities. So the universe is definitely here with us today.
Yeah, it's it's
So
it's very strange with
yeah,
these Navajo stories, I guess you would say, because the way us Navajos tell the story of us getting out of this blue world, because we were there too much, and one of the insects that we brought from the black world, he was messing around with the chief's daughter, I guess, with one of the birds, and he got pissed off. He's like, "You guys got to go. Like, you guys can't be here no more. You guys are messing up our herd."
what kind
So
of
then,
insect was it?
yeah, yeah. So then First Man and I think it was the Bee, they were trying to like figure out how the heck are we can get out of this world. They don't want us here no more. So then he it's kind of like tarot, I guess you would say. He made an altar, and he put up 4 wands, 4 different wands, and he drew like different pic, pic, pictographs on it, and they prayed, and somehow a magical spaceship was took them out and took them into the yellow world, this yellow world that we're currently in now, they say. And it's very interesting because you know how people talk about how the sun was yellow and now it's white. That's the transition of the Navajo worlds. After the yellow world comes the white world. And it's very interesting because it seems like someone is either they know the stuff or they're constructing it, or is it really happening? Because with the glitter world, they call it the Nudle. And for us Navajos, the Nudle is LGBTQ person, is a effeminate man, a Nudle. And
And that's
that's
also
what,
the sparkle world. So,
yeah, that's
so,
the glitter world.
so it goes from the black world to the blue
Yeah,
world.
the blue world to the yellow, the white, and the glitter.
Hmm, glitter.
Because the reason why they'll say that is because for us Navajos, the corn pollen is very, very sacred. Every Navajo usually has a piece of it. They have it around them, I guess you would say.
Well, corn is obviously very important to life, a food source, used also for clothing, I'm sure.
Yeah, for corn pollen, they tell us that we're all walking on this path of life. There's a path that just goes straight, and when we're walking on that path, there's evil that comes upon us. There's the stagnation, there's blocking, there's blockage, there's different entities that come against us. So with that corn pollen, we take it and we bless them, I guess you would say. The corn pollen is pretty similar to the yellow brick road, and that's where I also believe the concept of the Wizard of Oz came from. The yellow brick road is because that's how us Navajos would draw the corn pollen, is to make a yellow path.
Now, there's megaliths in Peru, as one example, and other locations that have these polygonal blocks and these interesting looking blocks, and the way that they form. Most people haven't noticed this. It forms what looks like corn on the
Yeah,
cob, the way that
cool.
it's put together. And
Yeah.
I would think that has something to do with structure as well, like the strength and integrity.
Yeah, for us Navajos, that was also one of the stories. That first man and first woman also came with corn. The first man came with I believe it was yellow corn, and the female came with the white corn, and together they created the magic of what it is today. And bean corn is like the number one cash crop in America. It generates so much billions of dollars. Like if you were to eliminate corn out of the cash crop in industry, it would be a big devastation to America, I guess you would say.
Yeah, and corn is most corn now versus what it was 50
Yeah,
years ago, 100 years ago, 500
yeah.
years ago.
They,
It's
they say
really
like only
unfortunate.
they say like only 30 or 40% of corn is used to consume. That the rest of it's used for like bio fuel, bio just goes into everything. Corn is in pretty much a lot of stuff.
Now, if all that
It's
corn was organic, that'd be one thing, but the majority
yeah,
of it's filled with pesticides and herbicides and stuff that is just, I don't want anything to do with.
yeah. And that's where us Navajos believe that there's four like bad medicines that we introduced into our bodies, our temple, and these four bad medicines are like bad thoughts of ourself. Like if we have a bad thought of ourself, like oh man, I look ugly, I'm like this, I'm like that. Those are bad. That's a bad medicine. And backbiting, like when we gossip about people, like when oh this guy's like that, this guy's pretty broken or whatever. That's also another bad medicine. And how we view people is another bad medicine. And how we communicate is an ultimate bad medicine. And that medicine right there is the hardest medicine that I've been trying to get away from because it's really addicting to talk bad and down to people, especially when you're you know that you know that feeling how to you know that feeling of power, I guess you would say, when you're a veteran. Because when we went to Iraq, we were up there. We were the thing. We were the man. We were the man with the big gun. We had the big helmets. We had the full battle rattle. It was just yeah,
Man, that must have been tough. And I know we've talked about this. You go over there and then people are walking up to you like you're, like some type
yeah,
of god almost.
yeah.
They're totally blown away. And
Oh, they thought we were man and machine. They thought we were androids, I guess you would say. So it took like about at least 2 or 3 months for them to finally figure out, hey, these guys are human like us. When we started talking to them, taking off our helmets and just being nice to them, I guess you would say.
I mean, imagine thousands of years ago in a similar situation where people show up with advanced
Hmm.
technologies or
Yeah.
advanced costumes, even. It doesn't
Hmm.
necessarily mean they're aliens. They could have some like elaborate costume on, like you said, and the
Yeah.
locals are like, "Look, it's a cryptid," and then they hang out with them for a few weeks, and they start taking off the helmet, and they're like, "Oh, they're like us. They have different pigmentation in their skin. Big deal. They're pretty cool."
Yeah. For us Navajos also, we like when we see a rainbow, we're supposed to point with our thumb. Like when you see a rainbow, you're always supposed to point with your thumb. They say not to point with your finger. If you point with your finger, they say like your finger will like bend a bit. So that would be the scolding back in the day. Would be like, don't be pointing with the rainbow with your finger, like you point with your thumb.
That's an interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. I wonder what
So
the origination of that was.
I don't know. When I was in Iraq, this right here meant pretty much the middle finger. So we thought we were doing a good job. They were doing this to us. They were like everybody had their thumb up like this, but when we figured out later, it's pretty much like holding the bird up, like pretty much flipping us off.
Interesting. Well, I know if you do the opposite peace sign like this, if you're like
Yeah,
this, people think you're saying peace, but no, you're not saying peace. You're saying,
yeah, it's just the same thing. They were doing the same thing like that. They were also like putting it in their mouth and like kind of like going like this to us. That's
wow,
when we figured out, hey, they're not telling us a good job or whatever.
they don't like us. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, we're rolling in with tanks. What do you think? Man.
yeah,
Now, I want to go back. Tell us more about, like, we started a little bit with the Navajo, where, but you had told me these transitions where it goes from walking with to standing to sitting with and then to kneeling too.
yeah.
The cycle of humans with the gods.
These cycles are practiced every year. They're they're little ceremonies that go on every now and then. They call them the squaw dances, I guess you would say, the white nomenclature of it, the squaw dance. But it is a ceremony that goes on during the springtime now. You just go onto your little Navajo hour, and they'll tell you where the locations are. But there's a Navajo. It's a tradition, I guess you would say, where a Navajo medicine man has a sacred he has a sacred rattle. The rattle is, the last time I seen it, it was a turtle shell, like a turtle shell, has pretty intricate designs on it, and this rattle is treated with great respect, and it's taken to little PowerPoints that is plotted out by medicine man. So it's pretty much like finding ley lines, little PowerPoints for it to hold those ceremonies and healing.
Okay. Now, and how does that connect to, like, I want to hear more about these cycles. So when you had talked to me about it more,
The cycles are according to the growing patterns of how the world is working. These cycles are, they tell us where to grow our crops and how to grow it, when to place down the watermelon, when to put down the corn. For us, we're very spiritual. It's been a long time since I've looked into it, but I remember the Pleiades star, the Seven Sisters, is one of, it's an evil constellation to us, I guess you would say. They call it the dark god, the dark god's pineal gland. But when that constellation goes down and you can't see it no more, is when we plant our corn.
okay. And then if we go to these 4 cycles again, like how would that relate when you're standing with the gods? Is that when you grow crops, and then when you're kneeling to the gods, that's when
Oh, I see where you're going with this. Yeah,
yeah.
I never looked into it like that, but that's a very interesting concept that you're thinking there. I mean, that would be one thing.
What do you connect it to? What are your thoughts? Because when you let me rephrase this, if I may, please.
Yeah,
You sent me about a year or so ago a article of President Biden kneeling to somebody that I think is pretty important in the Middle East, like Israel or something, if I remember
yeah,
correctly. Do you remember that?
yeah.
And
I
then you
don't remember who he was kneeling to, but yeah, I remember he was kneeling, and that was a strange image.
and when you sent that, and then we had talked about the different cycles,
Yeah,
and it made me think if there was a time when we were the whole verbiage thing's important too. You got to remember, folks, because like you refer to gods, I'm not referring to the creators of the universe necessarily, or the creator of the universe. We're talking about very high level beings, very powerful beings, possibly the progenitors of this version of humanity, or one of the versions of humanity. But
yeah.
so I was thinking to myself, okay, if there was a time when humanity was walking with the gods, clearly we were friends, we were, companions, we weren't looked at necessarily as inferior or like being punished. But then we go from walking with to just standing with, and I'm like, okay,
No, it's walking with, sitting with, standing with, and then kneeling.
interesting. So it goes walk, sit,
Yeah,
stand,
walking,
kneel.
and then the sitting part is when they teach us. They teach us their whatever their knowledge, the sacred knowledge, and that's the sitting part of it, is the learning phase of it. And then the standing part of it is taking that knowledge that they taught us and putting it into motion. And then after that, the kneeling part of it is the completion of the teaching, is thank you for teaching us these sacred teachings that we will carry on till your return.
Now that sounds beautiful. The way that I was thinking of it sounded, in my mind, it was a lot
Yeah,
darker. So I like your presentation much better. Thank you. That
yeah.
gives me
These
more hope.
these teachings are like repeated to us, and now, like, since I was a kid, you go to little ceremonies here and there for the family, and you have a medicine man that'll recite these same um these same words, I guess you would say.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm glad you explained that to me, because for the past,
Yeah,
ever since you sent me that image, my mind has been going in a
yeah,
completely different direction. Uh,
yeah,
that's why we need to have more. We need to hang out more, man. We definitely need to hang out more. Let's go back
yeah.
to let's go back for a minute now to the different ages, right? And And most people think we're in the yellow age, but then we're talking about the age of the white sun possibly, and then it goes from the white to the glitter. Now, if let's take out the LGBTQ thing for a minute and think about the possibility of if it is connected to the sun, and if it went from like if we went from an ocean world like blue, or we went from black space to blue to ocean water, and then we go to yellow, right?
Yeah.
Where the sun was yellow in the sky, and then maybe the sun changes from yellow to white, and or the atmosphere changes, so we perceive the sun white, and then it goes from white to glitter. So if that's connected to the sun, imagine that, folks. Imagine something happens with the sun and the magnetosphere and the physiological 3D world, and it's now like glitter. Your thoughts?
Yeah, that's crazy. It's amazing, like how all these glitter. It's everywhere. I guess you would say it's a very glittery world today.
Glitter bomb.
And that's not a bad thing. I mean, it's a bad thing for people that are carrying on the hate religion, that are are like, oh, this is bad, this is not good, or whatever. But the people that are growing, that want a better life, that it's unstoppable, I guess you would say. This, whatever is coming, it's not, there's nobody, it's not going to be stopped. I mean, even though people are trying to anchor us onto these, they're trying to anchor us onto what's been holding us in this circle for the past 2,000 years, I guess you would say.
Yeah. You think that's connected to when people talk about the different ages of the zodiac and the different houses of the zodiac?
Oh, yeah.
Do you see a connection there with Navajo traditions, that the stars themselves actually have a big influence, like what house we're in, and the physiological, the political, the scientific, the overall makeup of civilization during those times? As an example, I want to thank Shondale very much for sharing his knowledge and time with the Secret Leak Project, and jump on over to our Patreon page, because this interview is uncensored and almost 2 hours. Be excellent to each other, everybody, and be the change you want to see. Real quick, check us out over on Patreon. Why? Because I have hundreds of hours of exclusive content, ad-free, uncensored, unedited, stuff that we can only talk about on Patreon, beyond the cutting edge, and you'll get access to it for only $1 a month. And if there's an interview that you want me to do, a guest that you want me to get on the show, or a topic that you want me to discuss, if you leave a comment over on Patreon, I'll do my best to get that guest on the podcast or that subject. And I'll even do my best to get back to you here on YouTube. And your contributions greatly help Leak Project. So check us out over on Patreon, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel here and hit the bell for all notifications, and check back daily for new podcasts, because we upload podcasts pretty much every single day. And has anyone told you today that you're awesome? Because you are.